Caddis Maximus here again, this time with a quote-unquote review of the Reese 7005300 trailer coupler lock. This is Reese's little brass coupler lock, commonly sold for $10, a whopping $10 for this absolutely terrible quality little lock. This will be going back to the store, but I wanted to do kind of a public service announcement because this Reese lock is as close to what I would consider a near fraudulent product as you can get. And the only reason I think this is they get away with it is because nobody's really called them out on this. But this lock is absolutely ridiculously bad. And they charge $10, $10.50 at AutoZone. And we'll get into that, but it's hilarious that this for $10.50 at AutoZone is just obscene. This is literally a dollar store lock. Retail, this is a $1 lock. Just down the aisle for $14, literally $3.50 more, you can get a lock like that. This is not the best lock in the world, that's for sure, you know, but it's an actual somewhat respectable master lock. And for $3.50 more, it is just totally beyond comparison to this little brass lock. It just doesn't make any sense. And this is literally at AutoZone. They have this for $10.50, this for $14, and there just is no comparison. We'll get into that in just a little bit here. First, we'll just look at the keys. They are actual stamped sheet metal keys. They say CCP. For a second there, I thought they said triple C, CCCP. I went and found ones that I thought had the strongest bidding, but this lock is just so terrible. It's known as a wafer lock. There indeed is. I counted up in the lock. There are 5 wafers, so I got the strongest bidding. Whenever you buy locks retail, it's kind of nice because you can see the keys in the packaging and always get keys that all have the greatest exaggeration, the most sawtoothing possible. Anyway, this lock, as we can see, besides the keys, the finish is just terrible. It looks like cast brass, not even billet brass. Just horrible hand finishing. This is made in China, but this is actually shameful for Chinese quality. I mean, they went and found one of the most backwoods factories they possibly could to get these locks. And it just is terrible. We can see that they even sand the pinning, so the pins that hold in the lock shackle and hold in the lock cord just sitting there, and they're made out of brass. The sizing is so bad, you can see when they put in that pin, it started bulging out the brass. You can just see how harsh the sanding is. It is all caddis wonky. You can see how that shackle is just all weird and sideways, how this groove right here just wasn't cut out very well. And then, of course, there's the massive hole that the shackle goes into. It's totally mind-boggling. And so the idea behind this lock, they say that it is an adjustable lock, and we'll open it up here, if I can get the key in, is literally it just has 2 little ratchet catches, so it can get put into one position where the lock shackle is only partially shielded, or all the way down to 2 positions. As we can see on this shackle, they bent it over at 90 degrees, and right there where it's bent over, it's just incredibly weak. But it doesn't matter. I mean, the loose and slop is just horrible. But one of the biggest criticisms, besides what you can get for the price, and I'll show you all these locks over here that are all less than double the cost. So if this is $10 or over $10, all these locks I'm going to show you are all less than $20 and offer you a quantum leap in physical security as well as pick security. I mean, this lock is just absolutely horrid. And really what makes it the worst, they had like 6 or 7 of these on the shelf. They all look the same. They're all just disgusting. And I'll show you what is the most disgusting part. Is not that it has a wafer lock. Wafer locks use flat pieces of sheet metal instead of actual round pins like in a pin tumbler lock. And they are really, really, really easy to pick. A street cleaner bristle will pick most of these kind of wafer locks. So it has virtually 0 pick resistance. I'm sure it has virtually 0 mechanical resistance. I'm sure you could get, anything, a piece of rebar, or just hit it with a hammer a couple times and it'll bust open. But you don't even have to go through all that effort, because what we have here is a bristle from the brushes on street cleaners. So these are bristles or little pieces of wire that always end up on the side of the road in the gutter. And since this is a trailer coupler lock, there's probably one sitting in the gutter next to the trailer that this lock is on. And I'm not a lock picker or anything, but I noticed that there's just such a monstrous gap, and it just uses a hook pawl that's spring-loaded. I thought, well, we could just take one of these little street cleaner bristles, and they tend to have a side here that's, you know, where it brushes against the concrete that's rounded. So I'm just going to jam it down into this hole here. Just like that. Oh, look, it popped up one notch. Let's see if I can do that again. Oh. What was that? I just used a street cleaner bristle to open this lock? Come on now. That would be sitting in the gutter next to the trailer that's on. I mean, that's just the absurdity of it, is that hole is so big, and using a spring-loaded pawl, and then the hole is just so oversized that you can use a street cleaner bristle in there. Wow. Just totally insane. Literally, one of these laminated Master Lock number 3s, which you can find for like, you know, $3 or $4, offers more pick resistance than this does. Master Locks are super easy to pick. This thing isn't even picking. You can just stick any random piece of metal practically in there. I can't do it, but they're really that bad. So the basic Master Lock offers more pick resistance and a heck of a lot more physical security, especially these new ones. And I was going to mention that real fast. If you ever just want a basic lock for locking a gate or something, when you buy these Master Locks in the last year or two, they have ones with stickers on the packages that say now even stronger. And they use a ball bearing locking mechanism versus the traditional spring-loaded pawls. And that's a significant mechanical upgrade. And they have a couple extra layers of steel to accommodate that. So they're a little heavier and beefier. And they all have this pull-out and drill protection integrated. So just wanted to mention that. There are new ones that look like these, but they still have the traditional style. And just in the last year or two, they started upgrading them to the ball bearing. So these are actually pretty righteous for, you know, what you would pay for them. You know, $2 or $3. Anyway, we're going to move through the rest of this review showing you a variety of locks, starting with this Master Lock, which are better. That Master Lock, you can get 2 or 3 of them for the price of this Reese. And because this has a heel-toe locking mechanism, it's not going to be, you're not going to be hitting this with a hammer or shoving anything in between the shackle to get it open. And just to show people why the ball bearing style locks are such a big deal is, and sorry about my fingernails, I do have the medicine for it. You have to take it for like 6 months. Anyway, how those locks work is there's the ball bearings, and they sit in between grooves on the shackle right there, and then there are ball bearings inside. So inside the lock you have this little cam, spring-loaded cam mechanism. This one's out of an American lock. And how it works is when you unlock it, the balls are able to retract in those grooves, and then it's spring-loaded. So as soon as you push this cam is constantly trying to shove these balls out, but it can't because the lock is open. As soon as you shut the lock, this cam will rotate out and push the balls out like that. And it's known as a heel toe, and now there's a solid piece of brass in between the two locking balls. And the only way they can be pushed in is either this cam turning or being hit with such force that it actually causes the ball bearing to crush in the brass, which takes a surprising amount of force even on brass. And that's why they're just an industry standard. This mechanism is just super duper solid and is a captured system, and it really is. That is the standard, using ball bearings and a heel toe cam. So that's how they work. Since I did show this one earlier, what was funny is that most auto parts stores, the only locks that they sell are like these trailer hitch locks. I kind of like AutoZone a little bit because they have like a little section where they have about 10 different padlocks. And I just thought it was insane because I went over there and they have a bunch of junky, you don't want to buy Master Locks. And then they had this, which is known as the Master Lock 532, which can be had for, you know, $14 at AutoZone, something like $11 or $12 on Amazon. And these have a big difference. I mean, I got one with like one of the world's worst key biddings. You don't ever want to get a key like that. Don't worry, I bought the lock with the bad key. So you don't have to worry about getting it. But it has 5 actual pin tumblers, so it's more than the 4 pins that are in there. 4 of these pins are spool pins, so it actually offers something that can legitimately be called pick resistance. It's not high security, but it's much higher than the laminated Master Locks. 3/8 shackle, solid billet steel body for $3.50 more than what this is. It's just, this master lock, as much as they're criticized, is literally just you can't compare these two locks. You could take this lock, put a chain on it, and beat this lock to pieces with this one, and then continue to use this one for the rest of your life. That is a disparity. You can just see the solidity dropping that or something like that, which is literally down the aisle from this lock at AutoZone. But the reason this is a public service is because these little Reese locks are just sold everywhere, right around the same price, $10, and it's a ripoff. It's just an absolute ripoff. It's criminal. It's just like, what is this company doing? Whoever owns Reese, this is Sequent Consumer Products. Really, ouch. And I'm sure they're making a killing because they have their stuff everywhere, but this is just ridiculous. So anyway, you could just, at AutoZone, go down the aisle and get a heavy-duty billet steel master lock. And for a few dollars more, this is a tough lock. This is a lock physically that's strong enough that it'll probably break your coupler lock. The sheet metal or whatever it's made out of will fail before this lock physically fails. A short, narrow shackle 3/8 lock like this can take a huge amount of beating and physical force. And of course, it's a ball bearing mechanism in there. And we were mentioning that's a horrible shackle tolerance. That's called proper shackle tolerance. You could only fit a thin piece of sheet metal in there, and since it uses heel toe, it doesn't matter what you do stuff in there, it doesn't do you any good. So if you're at AutoZone, get this lock. Holy moly, this is actually not a bad master lock. Other locks, as far as the next cheapest, would be this master lock here, which is a shutter lock, brass, much better quality. This is like $4 or $5. Still a quantum leap above that Reese lock right here. We can see that it also has very tight tolerances around the shackle, nearly impossible to shim this lock. I don't know if this has any security pins, but this is still a lot more pick resistant and more physically durable than this little Reese, and it's just about the same size. So if you just want a cheap little brass lock, get one of these little master shutter locks. That will at least be better than that Reese. Another option from Master Lock, if you do want corrosion resistance, might be this, what is this? That's a, there we go, 576. Same thing. It has a 5-pin core with 4 security spool pins. This is a 5/16 shackle, so it's just a bit smaller than that big steel one that's at AutoZone. But once again, we have 5 pins. This one I got much better keys. It has lots of high-lows. And this is also ball bearing. So very much higher quality. This would be an awesome lock. And this is right around $10. For $10, the difference between that master lock and this Reese brass lock, it's just not even a comparison. It's really just pretty amazing. This lock is amazing compared to the Reese. And these little brass master locks really aren't that bad for the price. For physical security or anything, you could even get this little tiny aluminum one, this little 570. It's key retaining, so the locking cam doesn't have a gap. The core and the cam are physically locked together, so you're actually forcing it locked. There's no spring tension, but for the cam to turn, the lock core has to turn. And that's what key retaining is. But even this lock would offer more physical security, pick security, all of the above over this Reese lock, and this thing's, $6 or $7. Even an American aluminum lock, something like this, would offer a big quantum leap in pick resistance just because it's an American. You can put 6 pins in them. They have all serrated spools and serrated pins. They're much higher security, of course, and other ball bearing. So aluminum locks are a lot more physically tough than people give them credit for. Most aluminum locks, under physical twisting or beating attacks, usually it's the shackle that fails before it's the aluminum lock body that fails. It's soft, it can be hacked through just like brass, but you're buying these more for corrosion resistance rather than physical durability. You have to get steel locks if you want physical durability. Anyway, this would be another awesome example. American 1105 would be a great option. Still about $10, or the same price as that. What I would personally recommend is an Abus. You can get these off of Amazon for less than $20. When I checked, it was about $17.50. On this lock over this lock, you can't even compare. Abuses are really nice locks. You can get these to take like this. Takes a Schlage key, so you can key it to full-size keys, house keys or whatever, so you don't have to have extra keys. They come with the capability of being 5 or 6 pins, and they can be switched. They have a little Z-bar. It actually looks just like that little shape there. It says Series 2, but they're using a little shape. They have a little metal piece that can be reversed, so they can work normally like a lock like this, where you just unlock it and pull the key out. Or it can be key retaining, where the key won't turn all the way back. You see, you can't physically remove the key unless the lock is in the locked position. Now we can get the key out. The reason that's a big deal is, first, it makes sure that the lock is really locked, and it allows it, once again, the core and the cam are locked together, so even if you drill a hole partially through the side of the lock, you can't use a screwdriver to unlock it. You have to drill a hole all the way through the entire cross section of the brass. That's really the big deal for key retaining locks, is just because of that, by the fact that the key can't come back out, means that it's forcing the cam over. So even on old cruddy locks that are having a hard time, maybe the cam doesn't want to fully engage or you have a lot of tension, like a big chain or something, when you push these, if it doesn't want to lock, the nice thing about key retaining is you then can force the key to the lock position, and it'll just force that cam around and force the balls out. Or I should say, force the balls into the shackle. So you're mechanically forcing it to the lock position. So that's another reason they're higher security. So anyway, an Abus like this, and this is, a real thick, heavy-duty lock, and it's really pretty darn nice. And what the option is that you can get these to take full-size house keys and business keys, greatly enhancing your convenience of using the padlock, because you're not looking for the key that you lost, because it just takes your darn house key. You do need to go to a locksmith for that. And of course, a lock like this compared to this, it's just not even, this thing probably weighs 2 to 3 times as much as this one does. And of course, it's an Abus, so it's chock full of all security pins. And they're reasonably pick resistant, especially for a lock that's $17 on Amazon. Anyway, that was the end of the review, and I guess it was a review and comparison of the Reese trailer hitch lock versus other equivalent brass and aluminum locks, as well as locks in its price range. And it's just totally ridiculous. It's fraud. If anybody's ever bought one of these and still has a receipt, return it, because there are just so many other locks. Like at AutoZone, and just down the aisle, you have this massive lock, but you just have so many options that are all within either this right around the same price as this Reese, or less than double. Like this is $7. Well, if this is $10.50 at AutoZone, then this thing's only $7 more and offers you, just twice as much, 2 to 3 times as much metal, much less any of the, security features. It's just unbelievable. And it's really unbelievable that a lock like this, which costs less than half, this thing is like a $3 lock, is much more physically secure and even more pick resistant than this lock. And as far as mechanically resistant, this thing is much heavier duty and can't be, hammered open or, hammered on the side, known as wrapping or shimmed or anything like that, especially when you get the newer style master locks. It's just totally crazy. So that's kind of the purpose of this review. Do not buy this lock, because it doesn't really lock anything up. And they're charging you $10 for a $1 lock that doesn't actually lock anything up. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.